Welcome to the Classic Camera Revival, coming to you from the Greater Toronto Hamilton region of Ontario, Canada. If you don't have gear acquisition syndrome now, you most likely will by the end of the episode.
Hey there folks, Alex Lux here, and welcome back to the channel. I have something a little different for you today. I'm going to be sharing footage from an interview I did with Matt Betchberger. Matt, the gentleman behind Reveni Labs, has just launched their Kickstarter campaign today for the new spot meter that he's developed. Fantastic piece of equipment. I know that I'm definitely going to be tossing my hat into that ring as well. Not only because I like Reveni Labs, but he's a good friend, and these days supporting your friends is super important. So check the description below. I'll share a link to the Kickstarter campaign, and without further ado, let's hop into the interview. Okay, folks, before we get to the main interview of our show today, we have Matt back on the show and here to pitch to us a new light meter from Reveni Labs that will have just launched on Kickstarter by the time you're hearing this. So Matt, tell us about your new project.
Hey, so what I wanted to do was create an affordable and modern and small size digital spot meter. So spot meters are really popular, especially with large format photographers.
Yeah.
They're quite expensive though. Like a brand new modern spot meter is $500 or $600 US.
Absolutely, and they aren't cheap on the used market either.
Yeah, and the used ones, even ones from the 60s are still like well over $100.
Yep.
Could be $200.
I paid about $150 for my spot meter 5 the second time I bought it. I paid less when I bought it the first time.
Yeah, I bought one that was badly broken for about $35 at an auction. I managed to fix it.
Nice.
But yeah, they command a high price. So I felt like there was an opportunity there. So I designed a spot meter that uses a little bit of a different method to aim. It doesn't involve pass-through optics. It's completely opaque on the inside. And the way that it works is there's a sensor lens, and there's a sensor, then there's an internal screen with an aiming reticle, as well as all the data readout, and then there's a viewing lens on the rear. So it has a very small body because there's no look-through optics. And when you hold it to your eye, you get a virtual view. Essentially in one eye you get the data, and the meter obscures your vision in that eye, but you have your second eye, which allows you to view the scene, and your brain will combine the view from both eyes together, and you get a virtual overlay in your brain.
Oh wow!
So it's kind of like an imaginary view.
Gives you a heads-up display.
A little bit, yeah. It's kind of like a heads-up display.
Nice.
It's more similar to like a non-magnifying optical sight on a gun.
Okay.
Where the optics of the sight are sort of fixed on the sight itself and mounted to the gun. So imagine that the barrel of the gun is the sensor, and and then the like a red dot sight on the gun is a viewfinder. They're bound together, and then because there's some optics involved in the sight itself, the position of your head and the distance of your head does not impact the direction, the apparent direction that the viewfinder and the sensor are aiming.
Nice.
It's not extremely intuitive, to hear a description of how it works, but when you use it, it's actually very intuitive.
Okay.
And it works quite well. And it also, because of that lens on the backside, you can use it with glasses as well. It basically the distance between your eye and the meter is about 1.5 inches. Like from 1.5 inches away, you can see the entire internal screen.
Oh, wow.
So it works fine with glasses. So if you're out there with sunglasses or you need prescription glasses,
Yeah.
it's totally fine.
Wow.
So that's a nice feature too.
Yeah, so what sort of features does this have? Like, if someone, say, is a fan and uses his own system a lot, can you sort of tell it to, like, here's my shadows, here's my black point, here's my highlight white point? Will it sort of give you an average exposure?
Yep. So there's 3 modes. There's a single mode, there's a 2-spot averaging mode, and then there's a mode called precision metering method, which is essentially an extension of the zone system that was created by Nick Carver. He's
Okay.
a YouTuber,
Yeah,
large format
I've
YouTuber.
heard of him. We'll make sure we include a link to that in the
Yeah.
episode notes.
So him and I developed. He has this system that he calls the precision method of manual metering.
Right.
And him and I developed a version of that, basically that method, which involves a paper chart essentially for picking. Essentially, what you do is you pick a spot in the scene and you apply a descriptor to it.
Okay.
So if you're looking at a light gray rock, you might describe that as being very, very bright.
Right.
And so you pick these descriptor words, sort of leveraging your human brain's ability to judge brightness with the meter's ability to measure brightness in a more like scientific way, like in
Right.
an absolute way. And so you pick a tone out of the scene, and then using the meter, you pick that tone. Then you use the arrow keys on the meter to select the wording that you equate that to. So if it's a light gray rock, you might say very bright or somewhat
Okay.
bright.
Right.
And then the meter then takes that and says, okay, well, if this rock or if this thing you pointed me at is very bright, then middle gray must be this, and it will compute what the middle gray should be.
Okay.
Then the meter has a compare function. So you when you press and hold the menu button, that puts it in compare mode. You can then look at other parts of the scene, and it will tell you what the text is for those parts. So if you look at the shadow, it tells you it's very dark. Or you look at something that you might expect to be middle gray, and it says middle gray.
Okay.
And then you look at something that's like, let's say you look at the top edge of a cloud, it might say textureless white or something like that.
Right.
So it basically splits everything into 11. They're essentially zones, splits them into 11 zones.
Yep.
But rather than just being zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, an arbitrary distinction, the zones are named with words, with descriptive text.
Oh, that makes life so much easier.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And it's certainly much more intuitive than the standard zone system involving, zone numbers.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a little overwhelming for someone who's never worked with it and can't make heads or tails of what Ansel Adams wrote.
Right. And the other cool thing that the meter lets you do, so in Nick Carver's method, where you're using a paper chart to equate, essentially equating exposure values to text using a written chart. If you have film with a different sensitivity or different latitude range, you have to use a different chart. So there's basically a chart for slide film, there's a chart for black and white, color negative. In the Reveni Labs spot meter, it's actually got the ability that you can change the high and low limit. So you can say that textureless white is +5 stops, and textureless black is -5 stops. Textureless white is, you can do, but they're independent as well. So you can say +4 stops and -2 stops. So basically that means that if you are selecting, if you select a spot that you're calling textureless black and you've set textureless black to be -2, it's just sliding the scale up and down. So you can adjust it for your film. So if you run a batch of tests and actually determine your specific film's latitude manually, or you're just getting like rules of thumb latitude, or something from the manufacturer data sheet, you can load that into the meter and actually set the latitude range. So the meter knows what the latitude range is of your film.
Oh, that is so cool.
It's really neat. It's a really powerful system. And with Nick Carver's, combined help, we baked it right into the meter. So there's no more paper chart.
Oh.
There's no more multiple paper charts for different film stocks. It's
And
all
carrying
roasted
all
right
that
in.
around with you in your camera bag and
and having to convert, like, so with his method, on his meter of choice is the Pentax digital spot meter. So you'd have to read off the EV from inside the viewfinder, set it on the ring. He actually makes a little sticker that you put onto the outer ring. You have to set it on that ring, and then you have to use your chart to infer this number means this descriptor text. It's this. It was like a 4-step process or something. Now it's all baked right into the meter.
Awesome.
It's really cool. So that's one of the modes. The other modes are just single like standard mode, basically. Sample one spot. So you pick your target. Yeah, you press and hold the power button. The power button's also the sample button.
Right.
Press and hold. You get a reading. When you let go, it locks it. And then you can pick your shutter and aperture choices from there. But then if you press and hold the menu button, it puts it into compare mode. So you can check the relative EV from one spot to another, just to get a better sense of the scene latitude and stuff. And then there's a 2-spot averaging mode. That one, when you enter that mode, the screen changes. It says pick your shadow. You pick your shadow. Then it says pick your highlight. You pick the highlight, and while you're holding down the sample button and you're looking around the scene, it will show you. It shows you the shadow you just caught. It shows you the highlight in real time, and it shows you the difference between them, the EV difference.
So if you do
the delta EV,
the traditional zone system, it allows you to find those 5 stops.
Yeah.
Of difference between your highlights.
It'll let you
and
see
what
your stop differences are. Yeah.
Perfect.
And then so then basically you pick the shadow that you want detail in, you pick the highlight you want detail in, and it just basically splits the difference and gives you that as your metered reading. And then you can compare that again if you want to compare against other parts of your scene. Like if your subject was not, usually your subject isn't the darkest detail or the brightest detail you want. So it lets you recompare to what you're actually interested in catching in the scene, your subject or important parts, and confirm your exposure that way. Make sure that you're happy with what you got.
Nice. Well, it looks
and then,
like you.
If you're familiar with the. Sorry, what?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's very similar to the. I mean, it's built upon the Reveni Labs light meter, the hot shoe meter, where it's got a very similar set of of functions, and but in a spot meter way, and with this viewfinding, 2-eye viewfinding system implemented. So it's still very small. It's about 2.5 inches long.
Okay.
So it's very, very compact. It's very light. It's like 30 grams. It's very light.
Oh.
So it's really easy to backpack. Like it's it's no burden physically, which is nice because
not at all.
Some of these, especially like the Pentax spot meter V, like we were talking about. Like I think this thing weighs more than a pound. I have one, and it's you could beat somebody to death with it. It's not even made out of metal, and it's still. I mean, it's barely got any. It's mostly plastic, and it still weighs like over a pound. So it's it's
all the optics and the mirrors inside.
Yeah, the prisms and stuff. So so it's a big step towards miniaturization, and adding some advanced features without excessive clutter, like some of those Sekonic, like a Sekonic 758. It's got like, I don't know, 12 or 15 buttons on it. Like it's just littered with buttons, and it's got all these, like studio only features that, the average large format user's probably doing landscape or architecture or something. There's not as much studio, certainly not as much work with flash going on like people used to do. Nobody's doing product photography with large format anymore.
No, not to the same extent. Still a lot of people using large format for portraiture, like Matt Marash does a lot of
portraiture is still
that.
life. Yeah. Matt Marash actually has one of these. I sent him one a couple of weeks ago, and he spent some time with it. His not his most recent large format Friday video, but the one before, he does a walkabout in a park, and you can see him using it. He blurred it a little bit. I hadn't announced it yet, so he was using it, and he was blurring out something. Yeah.
Wait a minute, that's not his normal Sekonic.
Yeah. But by the time his video came out, I had announced it on Instagram that it was no longer a secret project. So
nice.
But,
well,
and then he's coming out with a video soon as well.
I'm looking forward to getting mine and trying it out. So I'll definitely be backing it on Kickstarter. And probably by the time what day are you launching it?
The Kickstarter's coming out on February 8th.
Okay.
And it will run for 30 days, so till March 10th or so. So there'll be some time.
So by the time everyone's hearing this, I will have already backed it. So.
Yep. So it's I'm planning to ship in August 2021.
Okay. Awesome.
It's basically the same timeline as the last Kickstarter for the hot shoe meter. All the same. I mean, they're very similar products in a lot of ways. So the whole manufacturing stream is basically the same. Awesome. This is essentially just a pre-order. I'm using Kickstarter essentially just as a pre-ordering system to garner, like a large initial volume basically, and make sure that it's actually something people are interested in.
Makes sense.
So that's why it's on Kickstarter again. Kickstarter is good for that, and it gets more eyes on it that way too. So
absolutely.
So that'll be great. So that'll be out by the time people are listening to this. That'll be available. The price is $225 Canadian. That's about 185 US right now.
Makes sense.
So it's well under the new, like any other new spot meter. It's like a third of the price.
Yep.
Meets a lot of the needs of a spot meter, of like a current film shooter's spot meter needs. So I think it's gonna meet the needs of a lot of people, and help get people into spot metering if they're put off by the pricing, because a lot of them are. I mean, you see people spending like over $400 for one of these Pentax digital spot meters from the 80s. Like it's an old piece of electronics, and I'm amazed they're still working as long as they have been.
Yeah.
Considering. So February 8th, that's coming out, and should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, best of luck. You crushed it on your first one, so let's hope that lightning strikes twice. Matt, thank you. Yeah, Matt, thank you so much for coming on to Classic Camera Revival again and launching this. I know you're a busy man doing the podcast circuit again, and hopefully we can actually get out and get shooting and have a beer soon. Yeah,
someday it'd be nice. Maybe. Yep. I mean, hopefully by the end of this year, at least. Like, maybe I hope that's not a lofty goal. End of 2021.
It's an optimistic goal, and these years' optimism is really what helps keeps us going, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So hopefully sooner than later.
Yes. Okay. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe and hit that bell notification icon. Send a like and leave a comment. And of course, make sure to tune into Classic Camera Revival this Friday.